Hey all, this is 012 Boku coming at you with another movie review. I know it's been a few weeks, but once again, doing other reviews, work and everything as you know. And just a quick word of thanks for you guys. I'm going to possibly get up because I'm also cooking my dinner at this time. So when I get up for a moment, don't mind that. And hopefully there won't be any more of the other classic interruptions that you guys have been falling in love with. Probably not. Sit down and do the review, you jerk. Alrighty. But anyway, as you saw, this week's review, I am continuing the espionage comedy genre of reviews. As you know, I did the Austin Powers 1 and 2 a little while ago, and now this time, since I got an anime out of the way, I am doing... excuse me. I am doing... Yes. Cats and Dogs. Cats and Dogs. I don't know how many of you remember this film, but I loved it the minute it came out. When it came out, I loved the concept for it, and I thought it was going to be a really good movie, a great film. And I discovered, listening to the audio commentary and the bit of special features they have on Cats and Dogs, that it was originally supposed to be an animated movie. Didn't stick around. I guess the Warner Brothers Studios, they convinced the directors, or the director and producers, who are Andrew Larza, Chris DeFaria, Warren Zeid, Craig Perry, and the director Lawrence Gutterman, to do it as a live action, because it would probably get more repeal and rapport. And it did, apparently. And so that's how Cats and Dogs came about. Now, considering this movie was made, in 2000, 2001, I believe it was 2001, there was a lot going into it, and it was just like a silly idea, like I said. What would you guys think, what Cats and Dogs do? Do they have secret societies? Are they agents? What could be fun? So they went with the secret agent James Bond spoof. Like they said they spoofed James Bond, Mission Impossible, all of the really good like espionage films to exist, basically. So those are where those guys are at. No pun intended for this film. And how does it start out? Well, a very simple thing. You get a introduction to a dog barking at a cat outside the window in a wholesome neighborhood town, and like the cat is playing with the newspaper on the outside, while the dog, Buddy, as he'll be called, is barking at the cat like wildly, like mad, like we see all dogs do. They seem to go nuts with cats. I know my dog here, Hawk, does, and I've seen a lot of my other dogs do it. I've seen other folks' dogs do it. Like, dogs go nuts when cats are around. So that's what Buddy's doing. Going nuts. You have the mother in this movie with her son Scotty. They're coming home. They have basically a young... sorry. Yeah, they come home with groceries. And I forgot, the mother's name is Mrs. Brody. So Mrs. Brody and Scotty are coming home with groceries. And as soon as Scotty's putting the key through the door, Buddy runs out. And he runs out chasing after the cat, and the cat's running away. And, they're chasing after each other. They go through all over the neighborhood. They knock down a mailman. You have the cat climb up a tree. The dog hits said tree, and like the tree's moving like it's a rubber tree, which obviously that's what they said in the special features. It is like a rubber tree. And you see how the Buddy noticed the tree moves, so Buddy hits the tree goes down, hits it again, keeps going down, then Buddy grabs hold of the tree, and they're both hanging there suspended. The cat hits Buddy, off the cat gets flung into a house. And, like, they knock down a woman, Mrs. Calvert, I think her name was Calvert or something, but she was baking a pie, cherry pie. You know, she gets knocked down, but she catches the pie from the cat. But then Buddy comes in, hits her, gets she gets knocked down again, and a hot pie ends up sadly in her face. She doesn't have any third degree burns, but you think she would. But once again, kids movie, even though the rating is PG. But as they continue, they go through all out the whole house, chasing each other to the point where they get down, back out onto the street, and where Buddy, got stuck in the house because the classic queer, the window door is open, and Buddy runs up at the cat, but then the door isn't open, so Buddy smacks into the glass, and his face is doing that little, you know, slide down thing, which is really hilarious. Sorry if that was really weird, but wanted to interpret that for you guys somehow, so you know what I was talking about. So that's how Buddy got left behind. And the cat's on the ground. Buddy goes in to investigate. He seems to be worried about the cat. But then the cat has got one eye open like that, like he's looking at him with one eye open like that. And then all of a sudden, this van, which is driving all wildly, comes out of nowhere. It parks right in front of Buddy. And on the back of the van, it says, on the license plate, it says Cat's Rule. The back door's open. Buddy, like has a shocked look on his face in confusion. He gets nabbed into the van, and he actually gets catnapped. Now, another fellow dog agent, Butch, who hilariously is voiced by Alec Baldwin in this movie, notices Buddy's kidnapping. So he goes out into his little doghouse, hits a control button, and in comes all these gadgets, computers, wires, satellite feeds, and everything to a dog control center where there is a control dog, I think voiced by Danny Mann, saying, control's here, what's going on? Buddy's like, we have a serious problem. Then the whole dog center is thrown into array because of Buddy's kidnapping from cats, because it's a big thing, and they just wanted to know how and why this could happen. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to get a new dog to to the Brody house. And there's a reason for that. I know I could always explain it later, but I'll explain it now. Basically, Professor Brody, who's played by Jeff Goldblum, and Mrs. Brody is played by Elizabeth Perkins. Scotty Brody or Scott Brody is played by Alexander Pollock. They're a family where they're a family where they're basically the regular suburban family, except Professor Brody is is a scientist, and he's trying to work on a cure for dog allergies. So that's why the dog headquarters is trying to get a new dog to the Brody house immediately, so the cats can't get into Professor Brody's lab and steal the formula and hurt dogs and all of mankind, probably. So they're going through like a huge training mission and secretive notes, like the whole montage of what you see in spy films where there's notes, PowerPoints, secret messages being passed off, and then apparently where a Doberman dog has been saddled by getting these little miniature Doberman dogs to actually come with them on a plane. They're headed to this one farmhouse out in the country to where there's a bunch of beagle puppies. And give me one moment, that is my dinner as you can hear, so let me turn that off so you don't have to hear that beeping. One sec. Dinner is done. Perfect. By the time this review is done, I can eat. Yay! you guys come first. In one moment, I'll be headed right back there towards it. All right. Whoops. I'm back. Yeah, so basically, the Doberman dogs are headed towards a farmhouse where there's a bunch of beagle puppies. And you have these beagle puppies, doing what puppies do. They're playing, horsing around, all having a good time, except for one brother of theirs. And their brother, who's dragging a pitchfork, who will later be named Lou by the Brody family, is carrying a pitchfork, and Lou's, moving it around, and he's trying to, hook up this device to fling him out the barn window. And, the other dogs don't understand him. They don't get him because they're like, like just having fun, having a good time. And, Lou's like, well, hey, don't you guys want to do something exciting, have adventure, like be like a space dog or a scientist dog or any of those types of things, where the rest of them are like, no, we'd rather have a family that loves us, have a bunch of our meals and also go to the bathroom wherever we want. And to Lou, that doesn't register well with him. So Lou's, trying to escape, which he tries to. Like, he pulls a sandbag that lands on the opposite side of the pitchfork, sends him flying, doesn't make it quite over to the window. He hits the side of the windowsill on the top of the barn, goes down to where he lands in hay, and a bucket falls on his head. While the other beagle puppies are laughing at Lou, something saws a hole through the floor. Somehow dogs can hold a saw. And the puppies go and investigate, and in come the beagle dogs. They usher the other, or not the beagle dogs, the Doberman dogs. The Doberman dogs usher the beagle puppies through the hole, and they go in through the hole, and the Doberman dogs are taken to place. Meanwhile, you have Mrs. Brody show up on the farm where the farmer's about to give Mrs. Brody one of his puppies. And they go in there and they're looking at the Doberman dogs, and the farmer's like, they've really changed in size, color, and breed. Because, like, the difference is really obvious. So, I mean, it was good fun. But Lou comes out from underneath the bucket to where Mrs. Brody, takes him. And, the farmer helps her by him, because he's not concerned. But he looks back at the Doberman dogs and thinks, whatever. To where the Doberman dogs, the little miniature Doberman dogs, all look up and they're just like, not good. Like they all say that in unison. Because they know there was a big mess up there. And then all of a sudden, we go back to the Brody house, to where Mrs. Brody is bringing Lou home. And, like she brings Lou in for Scotty to look at. Scotty looks at Lou, doesn't think much of him because he's still into Buddy. He hopes Buddy comes back. So, Lou isn't his big favorite. Mrs. Brody's like, well, we have to keep him, and your father needs him for work. And, you never know. You guys may get along and get into each other, but hey, your dad's work's important. To which Jeff Goldblum appears, Professor Brody appears, and like he comes in, starts like doing all these weird tests on Lou, testing his like retinal scans, his viscosity wetness on his nose, smelling him, sneezing, doing all these weird types of things. And you see several things in this movie to where Professor Brody like goes through sniffing Lou, and like it's like a really weird thing, and Lou's looking all weird like that, like wondering what's going on. So, bit of adult humor there. And, Professor Brody going through these things where he keeps sneezing, or he gets boils, or his nose becomes bulbous, and all these, like, hilarious things. Like, Jeff Goldblum really took this comedic role and made it his own. I mean, I have to say, he did a great job for Cats and Dogs here. He was a great choice as Professor Brody. And, as it continues, like Lou and Scotty are there with each other. They don't like each other. Scotty tosses Lou out of the house. Lou causes Scotty a cat person. Oh, and Scotty also called him a loser. as he called him. Like, why don't we call him Loser? And that's where they got the short name of Lou. But while Lou is outside, you have Lou run into Butch to where, Butch is trying to, like, meet him. But then, like, I forgot, a little bit before that, you have a Acme bone on a balloon. An Acme dog bone. So picture a big, huge dog bone with the word of Acme on it. Just going down, circling towards the dog, slowly, floating down towards him. It lands there. He's about to eat it. Butch is like, I wouldn't do that. Kicks a branch. The branch lands on the bone. Boom, big explosion. And, like, Lou's all acting all weird. And, he's like thinking, what's going on? How'd that happen? That was my bone. And Butch is like, well, hey, you're an agent. And Lou's like, whoa, I'm an agent? Like, how did that happen? And, like, it's all these hilarious things because Butch knows what he needs to do to make Lou an agent. Lou, who has had no training or anything whatsoever, is just like, oh, like kid at Christmas. I'm an agent. Hey, hey. So Butch is thinking that Lou knows all the necessary techniques and things. So he brings Lou into the rest of the team. And you have this one dog. I forgot what it is, but it is like a Chinese tufted dog, like a hairless. I forgot what type of dog Peek is, but he meets Peek, who's this like little average sized dog who like lives in like a sewer hatch. It's actually connected to like a tube that Peek stays in to monitor the whole neighborhood in the Brody house. And Peek is greatly voiced by Joe Pantoliano. And Joe Pantoliano did a really good job doing Peek, gave a bit of good fun to him too. And you can tell like Joe Pantoliano like seemed like to have a lot of fun with the role. And so, he meets Peek, runs into Peek, Butch tells how Peek is their surveillance. And then they run into Sam, who's like a big shaggy dog, sort of dog. And so, like they're waiting for Sam, and Sam is like obsessed with being stealthy and thinking he can fool the other guys to where they can't find him. So you have Sam basically running around, dodging through bushes, rolling in the middle of the street, trying to be all covert, but then all he is he's in the middle of the street and nowhere near his friends. So then you have Sam meet up with the rest of them, and Sam is greatly voiced by Michael Clark Duncan. Rest in peace, Michael Clark Duncan, man. Michael Clark Duncan, who did a good job. They said in the audio commentary he really had a lot of fun with the role as well. Enjoyed what he did too, and it was good stuff for him. And they're trying to like get all this information out to Lou, but then all of a sudden a human passes by to where they're all like, oh, human. And you have one dog chewing on a paper. You have I believe Butch's Peek is digging in someone's yard. You have Sam Sam trying to chase his tail, and I think Butch was peeing on the fire hydrant. And so all those hilarious little nuances. But the jogger that passed by, the human that passes by, couldn't care less. Just shakes her head and continues on. And overall to that, they're trying to get Lou to show them like the newest techniques from the academy. To where Lou just chases his tail, and Butch freaks out because he knows that Lou isn't an agent. And Butch is trying to contact HQ really quickly, trying to say, I got a puppy, you guys shouldn't have sent me this. And the guys were like, well, we're sorry, the puppy slipped through. That shouldn't have happened whatsoever. And, Butch wants a new team member, but the one control dog says, there's no time, the puppy stays, that's the end of the discussion. And then, Fuck, what's wrong? Did you need to go out again? Sorry guys, trend continues. I look like I need to let my dog out, so I apologize. I'm not trying to make these full reviews over an hour or longer, but unfortunately, a bit beyond my control. Come on, Hawk. Oh, I know, I see. If you were done waiting, why would you wait for me to put back in? Another another reason why I wish Windows Movie Maker had a pause button. Cheers, Windows Movie Maker. Probably also need to work on getting a better program then too. But either way, tangents aside, we then come to probably one of my most favorite characters and favorite groups in this movie. I mean, I love dogs, but I've got to say in this movie, I love Mr. Tinkles here and the cats. So that's where we end up. We end up with Mr. Tinkles in his mansion to where he's fiddling with silverware, doing all the things that a James Bond villain would do and be menacing and just roaming and roving around the house, doing all the usual stuff. And Mr. Tinkles is greatly voiced, which we don't know this yet. It gets revealed in a moment, but Mr. Tinkles is voiced by Sean Hayes. Sean Hayes really had a great time with this role. As he said in the audio commentary, he enjoyed it. He had a lot of fun. He just, loved being this cat. Really loved being this type of character, and he really molded it into his own. And it was great fun stuff for him to do. And he's walking around the table on top of it where there's a whole bunch of food, plates, silverware. It makes you wonder how all that was set out, but probably by the maid who we'll see her in a moment. But why Mr. Tinkles is like going over to all the cats, intimidating them and stuff, and he stops by a calico who says, you is the game afoot, and the calico replies, yes, the game's afoot, and then Mr. Tinkles is like, why is the game afoot? And all these weird things. And the calico doesn't know how to respond, so he's just like, no, and he's like, cool. And I should also say the calico is voiced by another great comedian in John Lovitz. Like, John Lovitz did a great job with the Calico Cat, like playing this naive, stupid cat, which, he seemed to have a great time at the role, and they said, like, he seemed like he enjoyed it. So it was good stuff for that as well. And, so Mr. Tinkles believes the game is not afoot, so he thinks Lou's dead. Then the Calico Cat says, Lou isn't dead. Or no, the Calico Cat then says, can I change my answer? And then, Mr. Tinkles is like, well, is the puppy alive or not? And, the Calico's like, well, another dog told him it was a bomb. And, Mr. Tinkles is like, another dog. He didn't put that into perspective that there could have been other dogs around. Or maybe the Calico didn't. But it was funny to see both of their reactions. And, the Calico's saying, Operation Dark Cloud will go off without a hitch, to where Mr. Tinkles replied, Dark Cloud? Is that what I'm calling my plan, Dark Cloud? So, the Calico Cat struggles to then where another cat adjacent to the table says, why not call it Storm? And, the Calico Cat says, well, no, we're not calling it that. Dark Storm is what we're calling it. And then Mr. Tinkles is like, well, yeah, like a dark storm, which I like. I'm going to, tear through the world, tear through the valleys, and make the dog world quake at the mention of my name, where we get the mention of Mr. Tinkles finally from a woman running into the main dining room who's a maid, whose name is Sophie, who is greatly played by Miriam Margolyes. And Miriam Margolyes seemed like she had a lot of fun in this movie too. She was like playing like a German maid. She seemed to have a lot of fun with the character and enjoyed a lot and just have a good time with it and everything. And she seemed to really enjoy the role a lot. And it continues on to where, Sophie finds Mr. Tinkles. She finds him and she's trying to get him, and she smells Mr. Tinkles, thinks he's smelly, so she's gonna go get Mr. Tinkles a bath. To where the other cats are laughing at him under the table because they're like, oh, don't forget to wash behind your ears, Mr. Tinkles, and stuff like that. So, it's good stuff on that front starting off. And then we go back to Lou, Butch, Sam, and Peek, to where they're all somehow fitting in Butch's doghouse. I don't know how, but they're all mostly there. And they're about to teach Lou dog lesson 101, history, and to where it's ancient Egypt. So Pete brings up the screen, and it's ancient Egypt, to where You know, they said, you know, oh, you think humans worship cats, but no, they weren't. They didn't worship them. They were ruled by them. You know, some evil cat named Shanak Akuman had them build temples in his name and likeness, and they were like enslaving the human race. And then all of a sudden, you know, the Jackal dogs came out of nowhere, and you know, took the cats down. And they actually make fun of the part in the Bible and the story of Moses to when the babies get thrown over the cliff and they get eaten by crocodiles. They replace that with cats, and the cats get eaten by the crocodiles. So I thought it was a funny little spin on that, you know, Bible story there. But like that's basically what happened, and you know, dogs took the place in human side, and you know, Lou's like, well, the humans just forgot, and you know, Pete's like, well, oh, humans are a primitive species. You know, they can't take responsibility for themselves, can't smell fear, can't take responsibility for their own parts. And, you know, then that leads to Sam farting, which is a good little joke there. And then Butch is basically telling Lou that, you know, you have to guard the formula. That's your main thing. You have to guard the formula and do what you can. So then we go back to Mr. Tinkles, who's getting a shower by Sophie. Sophie keeps like washing him, which Mr. Tinkles is hating. She takes him out. She puts a pretty butt. She puts a or no, that's later. Sorry. She takes him out of the shower, which his hair is all slimy and like all that. And what happens is Calico Cat comes out and he's like, you know, like there near Mr. Tinkles, and to where Mr. Tinkles says, you know, woman, when I rule the earth, you're the first on my list. And then the cow goes like, you know, you should keep your hair like that. It's very slimmy. And, you know, Mr. Tinkles is like, you know, there's plenty of room on that list for you. And it just continues. And they set up this thing to where, you know, Mr. Tinkles does not want to take the humiliation he's getting. He can't stand it. So he's like, well, you know, we got to accelerate our plans. Send in the ninjas. So then you have these Asian cats who hilariously are ninjas on little planes bombarding and parachuting into the Brody house. The other dogs pick up on this, but Lou and the others don't see anything. They're thinking it may be a glitch on the communicators. Lou's looking around the house, but then you have the Asian cats, you know, on suction cups tracking Lou. You know, you have one trying to get into the office door and, you know, nailing it, trying to get in there, which doesn't look like they can, but they're trying anyway. The ninjas also bug the Brody phones and all the hilarious ninja stuff. They don't understand what's going on, or the dogs don't understand what's going on, and it just continues on to that level of hilarity. To where, you know, Lou gets ambushed, he gets attacked by the ninja cats, and, you know, he's fighting with them, he's getting owned, but then he starts listening to Butch, who's watching from the outside. You know, he hits them, kicks them, knocks them down. What happens is Lou gets cocky. Lou then gets kicked in the face by another Asian cat, goes into some garbage. This wakes up, you know, Professor Brody and Mrs. Brody to the point where they go down. The other ninja cats have to retreat, and then they come down to where they see Lou, you know, was in the garbage, but it wasn't him. He was fighting the cats, but yet he ends up getting the blame for it. I gotta say, there's a funny scene to where when Mrs. Brody and Professor Brody come down into the kitchen, you have the part where Mrs. Brody has a bat, and she's like, she comes down swinging the bat into the kitchen lightly, and she's like, I have a bat. And then you have Professor Brody, who has a catcher's mitt in his hand, and he's like, I have a mitt, and I'm not afraid to use it. Now tell me, Jeff Goldblum is one of the few people to say that line and probably get a laugh out of it because of his delivery. And he made that line cool. So sadly, while Lou is being punished by the Brodies, but not only by him, he gets punished by, you know, Butch. Because, you know, he's celebrating how he had the cats going, but then Butch is like, you know, well, you got cocky, you almost could have lost. You know, it's about guarding that lab, not about Scott or the Brody family or anything else. It's about the formula. So what ends up happening is there's a noise in the back dumpster. Lou goes to investigate, thinking it's more of cats. But then there's another dog, like a type of I don't know. I would say it's type of almost what? Uh, oh, I'm sorry there. Oi, like a greyhound dog, and her name is Ivy, and Ivy is voiced really well by Susan Sarandon. Like you can really believe Susan Sarandon in the character of Ivy, and it really works well for her. And she was saying, oh, I'm a stray. I eat out of the garbage. Lou's like never met a stray, and Ivy sort of tells him, even though she's an agent as well, she tells Lou, you should stick with your family, not be so serious. Try playing with Scotty. Perk up your ears, do things that dogs do, and you'll get this family to love you. And Ivy then says to Lou, hey, if Butch asks, tell him Ivy's back in town. So setting up that little thing, and then you continue on with the Brody families to where Scotty's trying to get into soccer because he's a big soccer fan and he wants to try to get into tryouts for the either school or the town team. I mean, he's not that great, but he wants to try anyway. And to the point to where you have, I think it was shoot, what was what happened? Oh yeah, to where Lou, sees sees Scotty, perks up his ears, and Lou's like, oh, you're actually kind of cute. And like then Mrs. Brody comes down, and on a side story, she tries to get Scotty and Professor Brody to bond because their father-son relationship is strained. You don't really see a lot of it, but you can sort of get it by watching this movie that they have a strained relationship. And that side story in the movies, pretty good too, because you see how Professor Brody's like saying, I'm going to try to, not take work as seriously, and I'm still going to do my work, but I'm not going to be as serious about it. I'm going to try to come to your soccer tryouts, do right by you, and be there to support you. And like it's all these weird things, and like Scotty's like, okay, Dad, you can come, I get it. And that while he's leaving, you have Professor Brody like, oh, I'll be cheering for you, go go go. Our team is red hot. The other team ain't doodly squat. Our team ain't doodly squat. Once again, stuff you can only hear from Jeff Goldblum, folks. Really. This, however, sets up the next scene to where Mr. Tinkles comes in from Sophie to where he's with his comatose, I always want to say catatonic owner, Mr. Mason, who's like really old and on all these IVs and drip bags and stuff. Like he looks like he's almost at death's door. And like Sophie lays him down, puts him on Mr. Mason. She leaves him to do his things. I guess Mr. Mason almost like goes into cardiac arrest there, but Sophie's able to save him by hitting him in the chest once. And as soon as Sophie leaves, you have Mr. Tinkles wearing a pink bonnet to where he says, "Evil does not wear a bonnet." I don't think so. Did Genghis Khan ever wear a bonnet? Or did this guy ever wear a bonnet? I don't think so. Did Genghis Khan ever wear a bonnet? No, maybe a furry bonnet. I don't know if that's what it's called. And like he contemplates all those things, and to the point to where the cats still haven't gotten the formula. Mr. Tinkles is getting really annoyed, upset. He's losing patience, and he's told the Calico he wanted the ninjas. If the ninjas ever show their face again, you know what to do. And the Calico says, yes, tell them to wash with a loofah sponge. Which, it's a random line, but it's funny, and coming from John Lovitz, it's great. And, you have him, you have Mr. Tinkles then say to the Calico, no, I want them eliminated. And they get into a little fight, but then Mr. Tinkles is moving it along and says, well, look, we really need to get this done. Send in the Russian. So then, you have Mrs. Brody coming home from an afternoon of work, like, like she isn't coming home, she's still working, but she almost runs in to this Russian blue, which, P.S., according to the special features and the audio commentary, it's a British blue, not a Russian blue, but it's an actual British blue kitten. And she sees it, she brings it in, she thinks it's a girl cat, but it's a male cat, and you have Lou and this Russian blue looking at each other. And, you have Mrs. Brody going all nuts over it because she really likes the Russian blue cat. And as soon as she walks away, you have Lou looking at the Russian blue saying, "I'm on to you, kitty, and you're in big trouble." And then the Russian, cat goes, "I think not, baby puppy. It is you who are in trouble." And then, like, the Russian blue apparently takes a, hairball out, and there's this little capsule with fake poo that he twists open. It goes right on Mrs. Brody's Armani, yeah, Pakistani Armani rug or something like that. All I know is it's a very good rug to her, and it looks like an expensive rug. It goes on her rug, it looks like Lou's to blame. She kicks Lou out of the house. Obviously goes to clean up her rug, then heads off to work again, to where the, Russian blue is walking throughout the house, gets to the metal door, starts, trying to work through things, and, starts, ranting and raving about Mr. Tinkles. It's like, can't believe I do this job for half price. For half price. And Mr. Tinkles is a jerk. He talked too much and shed all over. And, he's setting up a bomb to blow through Professor Brody's door in order to get into the lab. Butch and Sam and Peak show up. They're not happy that, Lou messed up, so they want Lou to set up. Lou wants to still help, and I guess Butch and Lou get through a bottom door window. Lou accidentally hits the window out, and then the window shuts on itself through the basement, locking Sam and Peak out. As it continues on, the Russian blue's almost done setting up the bomb. You have Lou and Butch who are in there. The Russian blue notices them. He tries to attack them, by setting off the spike ball with a bunch of little, metal needles in it, trying to stab them and kill them. And they hide behind the couch, to where the Russian blue comes up with a, all this gear on, throwing knives, a boomerang thing he's using. These cool, agent assassin gadgets. It's really, a funny thing to see this little Russian blue kitty wearing these things. And as it goes on, Butch's trying to get to stop the bomb, but the Russian blue keeps throwing the boomerang, blocking Butch. Butch at one point gets tangled up in the phone cords. You have Lou trying to go around the other way to help Butch out. They're fighting each other. Nobody's there. Scotty isn't home. He's at school. Mrs. Brody's out. And, Professor Brody's in the basement. But, the Russian blue, almost bests the two dog heroes. He gets ready to throw the boomerang at Butch once more. All of a sudden, Mrs. Brody comes back home. And, they all have to freeze. Lou's frozen in place. Butch is there, even though he's still tangled up in the phone cords and everything. You have the Russian cat getting ready to throw his boomerang, where he's like, afraid and scared, looking around, and all the dogs, Lou, Butch, the Russian blue cat, they're all looking at this like it's weird, because it's all within Mrs. Brody's vision. But hilariously, Mrs. Brody can't see it, so she never notices it. She leaves, and she forgot her phone. She comes back in to get her phone. She leaves and takes off. The Russian blue almost throws the boomerang again, but then Butch gets out to run for the bottom door, and then all of a sudden, Lou goes, "Hey, cat," and then the Russian blue says, "Hey, doggy, catch." So he throws the boomerang. It's meant to hurt Lou. Lou tries to catch it because he thinks it's like a frisbee. Then he gets tossed around, almost flying. He goes around the room, and the boomerang's returning to the Russian blue. So the Russian blue gets knocked down with Lou on it. And then the Russian blue and Lou are fighting. Butch is trying to defuse the bomb, and Pete says one of the most hilarious lines, and he's like, "Cut the red wire." And Butch is looking at all the wires on the bottom, and he's like, "We're dogs. We're colorblind." And, you know, great laugh. And apparently in the film, too, in the audio commentary, they said the line got a great laugh as well. So that was very cool to see how that line fit well into the movie. And, you know, like, Butch apparently finds the right one, is able to defuse the bomb from the door. You know, Lou, like, took on and won the Russian Blue. He kicked him off, and, like, you know, they think they have the Russian Blue cornered. But then the Russian Blue's like, "You think you have one? Remote detonator." And he, like, has his remote detonator in his hand. He's laughing evilly about to set it off. All of a sudden, Professor Brody comes in, knocks the door into the Russian Blue, crushing him in a way. And, you know, you have Peek and Sam watch from outside the window. Butch is still in the house. You know, you have Lou there. Professor Brody sees none of this, or has heard none of the stuff transpire. He's just testing out Lou to see if his formula is working, which he keeps getting close, but it still isn't working yet. And then all of a sudden, like, you have here we go back down to the basement. Sorry, guys. The basement door closes, and then, you know, you have the Russian Blue who's all, like, tore up from the door. He falls down. He's still alive. But, yeah, he falls down all hurt and injured. And you have, you know, Lou come in. You know, Lou gets complimented by Butch. You know, Sam and Pete are a little jealous by it, but, you know, he gets a good compliment, and he's thinking like an agent. And then you have Mrs. Brody, who a little while comes through. She's got a cat toy for the Russian Blue, you know, 'cause she wants to, like, play with it. And then, like, she looks around her living room. She's like, "Oh my God, who left the window open?" So shuts the window open in her living room, and all of a sudden a dog with a paint can and everything comes running out. So obviously that was the cleanup crew cleaning up Mrs. Brody's house, making it look like nothing ever happened. And then we cut to the Russian Blue being interrogated. And, you know, the Russian Blue isn't talking, but they pumped the Russian Blue's stomach full of stuff. You know, there was standard stuff inside the Russian Blue: lockpick, grenade, plastic explosive, all the weird stuff you'd probably never find in a real cat. But then they also found a note from Mr. Tinkle saying, you know, this is what you're going to do to interact my finished plan. P.S. Eat this note after you're done reading it so no one will find it. So, all that hilarity. And they're sort of getting closer to Mr. Tinkle's, but nothing quite happens yet. And as everything keeps moving and continuing on, you have apparently this one scene where, you know, Scotty came back home from soccer practice. He's missing the ball every time, upset, like he's not that good. He stinks, and it's like, it's true that he stinks. You know, you have Mrs. Brody coming home trying to console him. You know, Scotty isn't happy. Mrs. Brody then goes to continuing the side story, by the way, what this is, to knock on Professor Brody's door. Professor Brody comes up. He's all ecstatic because he had a breakthrough in the lab. But then Mrs. Brody's saying that, you know, you missed a soccer game. Professor Brody realizes it, feels bad. You know, Scotty the whole time is also feeling miserable too because the parents are fighting. He's not good at soccer. Doesn't like what he sees. So then you have Lou come over, toss the ball back to Scotty. You know, Lou taking Ivy's advice, bonding with the family and getting to know everyone else. And, you know, Scotty and Lou play and they have a lot of fun with each other. So there's that great bonding scene, a great bonding montage where they have fun and they all have a great time. And it seems like I want to say they bonded in one day, but from the way they filmed the scene, it looked like it was several days. It was supposed to be one day, but they could never, ever film the shot within that one day. They had to film that shot over several days. So I want to say that time has passed between when Lou and Scotty finally became friends. And while they're playing and hanging out, you know, they're playing with the soccer ball. Lou and Scotty are headed upstairs. All of a sudden, Professor Brody comes out of his basement. You know, Scotty throws the ball falls, the ball goes down into the basement. Scotty and Lou run after it. You know, it bounces all the way through the basement. It actually gets on some of the samples. Doesn't break anything, but it's rolling around one of the top shelves with a bunch of samples. And as it looks like it's about to come down, Scotty looks like he can catch it. But as the ball's coming down, Lou hits the ball with his nose. The ball gets knocked into Professor Brody's formula, knocks everything into each other, and it just ruins, in a way, Professor Brody's work. To where Professor Brody comes down, he's upset that his work is ruined. You know, Scotty's trying to explain to him what happened, but Professor Brody isn't listening. And you know, you have Lou still down there knowing that Butch is gonna kill him, as he even says that in his thought, you know, oh, Butch is gonna kill me. Because you know it's not good. And at the moment of weakness, when Professor Brody doesn't think his formula is working, all of a sudden you have shoot. Sorry guys, trying to thought. Yeah, you have one part of the formula work. So, like, you know, it tested positive and it was a match to actually work and go through. So, go figure, causing an accident causes a happy accident and the formula to be completed and finished, to where Professor Brody tests it out and, you know, everything works and he wasn't allergic and, you know, he celebrates with Blue on his victory. It then cuts back to Mr. Tinkles and the Calico listening to Professor Brody telling a lead research scientist that, you know, his formula works. He wants to deliver it on Monday. You know, everything's all good. And, like, you have Mr. Tinkles trying to, like, recommend things and, like, trying to get it fast because he knows the formula is almost out of his reach forever. All of a sudden, you know, Sophie comes in. The Calico Cat takes the tape they were listening to from Professor Brody, hides under the bed. Sophie comes in. Sophie has this little maid outfit that she made for Mr. Tinkles, and she's like, I want you to try this on. Look what I made for you. And Mr. Tinkles just casually, still on the bed, comes up and he's like, no, I think not, Sophie. Those days are through. Oh my, what's that? A talking cat? Scary, isn't it? Apparently, sorry. Apparently, the scene was so bad for Sophie, she passes out, falls to the ground, and I guess the Calico and Mr. Tinkles lock Sophie in the closet, and they're like, their day has come. And as they're trying to set up their scheme, apparently the cats somehow took Mr. Mason, loaded him up in his limo, and then drove his limo from his mansion all the way to his Christmas flocking plant where he works. And, you know, they're like coming into the flocking factory. You know, the limo's going everywhere. It's crashing into everything because you have two cats doing the gas and the brake on the bottom. You have the Calico Cat driving. You have Mr. Tingles in Mr. Mason's lap trying to form the disguise. Everybody's happy to see Mr. Mason. Nobody notices the cats or anything because, once again, stupid reasons. And, you know, like, there's like all the hilarity with the cat, with, you know, the limo trying to get into the parking lot, trying to get in the factory. Mr. Tinkles gets tossed around everywhere. You have John Lovitz going, brake, gas, gas, brake. You know, just a hilarious scene. But they eventually get to the flocking factory where they come into it. And, you know, there's a bunch of cats running around, and, you know, all the workers are saying hi to Mr. Mason, and yeah, like, Mr. Tinkle's basically making fun of everybody, trying to talk fast, trying to get to the main office, and, you know, he gets there, you know, locks himself in there, and all of a sudden he tells all the human workers at the flocking factory, you know, you're fired, you know, like, don't blame yourselves, you don't need to ask why, you're just fired. But he's like, well, hey, unless you have a dog, kick him when you get home. You know, all those great things. And then the really quick thing that we saw from the trailer a million times, the cats rule for Mr. Tinkles. And then, you know, they're working on the next part of their plot, which would then lead to some tickets for a soccer game being mailed to Scotty that Scotty doesn't remember any contest, but it's apparently a soccer game, exhibition game, where it's Uruguay versus Chad. And Scotty really wants to go. Professor Brody's trying to tell Mrs. Brody about his formula working. And, you know, they have all these cool things that they're trying to do. But then Brody really wants to go to the soccer game. or not Brody, Scotty really wants to go to the soccer game, which Mrs. Brody's up for. Professor Brody doesn't seem so, but then he basically gets in line, takes his son to the soccer game, and then you have it to where they leave, and you have Butch come up to Lou. We're Lou's in the backyard, and Butch presents this badge to Lou saying, hey, you're a full agent. You did what you needed to do. The brass is impressed with you. Great job for the most part. And Lou's a little saddened because Lou learns from Butch that he won't be able to stay with his family. He goes where the dog agency needs him. After that, though, we have the Brodies who are going to the soccer game. They're at the stadium in the field, but nobody's there. They're wondering what's going on. They only wonder for a second, though, as they actually go to the parking meter. And then there's this cardboard cutout, I guess, of one of the producers. And, Professor Brody's trying to pay, but nobody's answering. The cardboard cutout just sits there. All of a sudden, it goes down. A gas grenade comes in there, knocks the Brody family out, and, they have the Brody family captive. And then, there's a funny scene after that family's captive. You have, I think, one of the ninja cats, like, dancing there. And you're like, oh, we kick butt, we're cats. We rule. We kick butt. So it's a little funny little dance. And then we cut to it being nighttime. It's nighttime, and Peak, Sam, Lou, and Butch all get a message saying that, there's a calico cat near the way, and he has a message on him. And what happens is you have Lou basically tackling the calico cat down, poor John Lovitz, but she apparently loved the smacking of the cat's head on the ground when Lou tackled him. So little sick humor there, but hey, we've all laughed at people falling before, or things happening to certain stuff. And what happens is Butch comes up, rips the tape off the calico cat, and then you have this hilarious camera introduction of Mr. Tingles trying to get a camera to work, can't figure out how it works, and it's a hilarious thing to do. I'll give you a few lines. Hello, my puny mind-face opponents. Well, what do you think? What do you mean the camera's not on? Well, I can see the red light blinking. All right, start over. Where'd you come from? Closer, 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 backwards. Is it on? It's not on. Nope. And just all the hilarious camera stuff. Basically, Mr. Tingles gets his point across. He's kidnapped the Brody family. He wants the dogs to bring all the notes and the research regarding the Brody formula to appear before midnight, or the Brody family will be killed. Lou wants to save his family. Butch doesn't really know what to do, but they go and they contact HQ, and they actually head to the headquarters in this awesome, little rocket ship that leads underneath from Butch's house all the way to the dog headquarters, which hilariously enough is at the center of the bloody earth of all places. So it's at the center of the earth, and they meet up there, and you have this nice montage where you see dogs there, and doing all their missions. Basically, dogs in training to sit, roll over, play dead. Dogs testing out a bomb on a toy cat. The toy cat explodes, and it's completely eviscerated, to where Butch then tells Lou, for defensive purposes, of course. And then Lou's just like, of course. And as they continue on, they also pass these dogs that are near the bathroom, and you have the mission control saying, please log in your identity confirmation number now. And then this guy comes into the bathroom, and he's this other cardboard dummy guy, and he's like, hey Tiger, what you doing? And all the dogs start drinking out of the toilet, and the guy's like, bad dog. So they drink out of the toilet to give their confirmation numbers. I thought that was a really funny scene. And then you have Butch and Lou running into the Mastiff, which I didn't say this before. The Mastiff dog is greatly voiced by Charlton Heston. It was a small role, but like this said, Charlton Heston seemed to enjoy it. He really liked it. And he got a lot out of the role, I guess, too, for himself. So like the Mastiff calls a whole council meeting to where a bunch of dogs run out of the worldwide dog show, go to the center of the earth, and discuss what they should do. And you have a lot of the dogs like freaking out, saying that the Brody family is expendable. They should just be killed to protect dogs. You have another dog saying, no, we can't leave these humans expendable. It's our duty to protect them. Whole bunch of other dogs just fooling around, having weird fun and everything. And Mastiff wants to regain control, so he's like, Steve, crowd control. So then this dog's breakfast in a can opens up slowly, and all these like contents of the wet food are in there. The dogs smell it. The Mastiff uses it to get them to sit, hilariously enough, and they decide to vote on what should be done. Lou tries to interject, saying they should send his families, or not send his family, save his family, but it seems like a lot of the dogs aren't for that, so they vote that the Brody family should be expendable, or should be killed to be the protection for the dogs, so they keep the formula safe. Lou isn't happy to hear that, and you learn how, like, as they get back, they have an argument, and you learn how from Butch that, yeah, we can love humans, but humans will just abandon you and they'll leave you with a person who can't really play or do anything with you, so it's not all good or cracked up as what it's meant to be. And like Lou says, so this is what's going to happen. You're going to blame me for what some family member and or boy did to you for leaving you. You're going to blame my family for that. And there's like that whole scene there and that whole thing. And then you have like quick going back to Professor Brody, Mrs. Brody, and Scotty to where they're tied up. They're trying to escape, but they can't. And then you have Mrs. Brody freaking out, telling Scotty it's okay. Scotty's actually pretty calm in the situation. He's like, Mom, I'm okay. And Mom's like, darn it, Scotty, I am your mother. I know what I'm talking about. And she's like freaking out really bad. And then Professor Brody in that situation asked probably one of the best questions ever. And it was thus: who do you think kidnapped us, Uruguay or Chad? Which one of the soccer teams kidnapped them? I mean, once again, only in Jeff Goldblum can you hear that type of stuff. What this leads to, though, is it leads to Lou overhearing something between Ivy and Butch, to where Butch is like, he's got to accept it, and then Ivy's like, well, it's because of this stuff that my family never loved me and ever stayed with me. That's why I'm abandoned and I'm astray. And Butch basically just walks away and says, we all have our sob stories. Now he has his. That sets a fire under Lou, and Lou basically somehow goes into the basement, loads up all the research and the formula into a radio flyer wagon somehow, and travels to the pier. You have Mr. Tinkles and the other cats showing up, and what happens is they double cross Lou, attack him, take the formula. You then have Butch, who's in the Brody house, realize what Lou's done. He's taken the formula. He's done that bad thing for the dogs. Tries to catch up. Gets to the pier, doesn't see Lou, but notices Lou's buried under a bunch of stuff. Frees Lou, and then out of nowhere, the payphone at the pier rings, to where the dogs pick it up, and you have Mr. Tinkles gloating gleefully while getting tossed around in the car, and basically setting up how he's going to defeat the dogs using the Brody family research, or Professor Brody's dog allergy research. Give me 1 minute, guys. I am getting thirsty again, and I'm almost getting lightheaded because I'm really into this review, and hoy, I'm just bar time, just really just going through here. Hoy.